Learn the keys for success from one of the Carolina's most successful developers. Coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Fox 43 studio on the former Myrtle Beach Air Force Base. We're focused on the life of David Douglas. Good morning, David.
Hey, Greg. Good morning, sir.
Thanks so much for being with us this morning. Incredible opportunity to highlight someone who's committed a heck of a lot to making people's lives a special setting.
You're kind. I'm glad to be here.
It really is great to get you in. Where's the Douglas Company headquartered, David?
We're headquartered in Aynor, South Carolina, a large metropolis in the western part of Horry County with our two blinking red lights. But Aynor is close to Gallivan's Ferry, which is my home, and it is the closest place to have a business. So we're the largest developers in Aynor.
Is that? Here we go. What prompted you to set the headquarters of the Douglas Company in Aynor?
I'm fortunate to be married to the former Christy Holliday from Gallivan's Ferry, and we moved down from Greenville 6 years ago with my 3 children, and live out in the country on the banks of the Little Petey River, and because that was the place where my wife wanted to live, and I like hunting and fishing, and I like the low country a lot. In fact, when I leave here, I'm going fishing.
Is that right?
So it's a good opportunity, and what I do, I can do as successfully in Aynor as I could in Myrtle Beach or as I could in Greenville.
You grew up in Greenville.
Born and bred in Greenville. Lived there all my life. Still have lots of close ties in Greenville, and we were there this past weekend visiting.
You still have family in the upstate?
I do. My brother and sister are still in Greenville. And Greenville's a great community. A lot of activity, a lot of civic life, so to speak. But I like it down here. We're very happy.
Absolutely. Where did you attend college?
Went to school at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Majored in business administration. Graduated in 1972. And my father was a home builder. And he died in July of 72, right as I came out of school. And I was working to help finish up some housing that he was building. 1972 was an excellent economic cycle. A fool could have made money during that period of time. And I built out some of the houses that he had started. They sold well, and so I thought, well, I just would go into the home building business. And that's how I basically started out.
And you've done some of that growing up? I mean, you think you go off to school for 4 years, and you know what it's like being in college, and it's, I mean, that must have been a big deal coming back and getting back into the family business.
Well, it really wasn't what I planned to do, to be honest with you. I had worked with my father during summers as a laborer, and putting 2x6 trusses up on the second floor, pushing them up manually was quite an interesting experience. But I decided I needed an education at that point in time. But it worked out well. As I say, home building in Greenville at that time was almost a cinch. The market was hot. You could sell about anything you built at that point in time. So I got kind of a false outlook, so to speak, relative to how to make money and how easy it would be, et cetera, because things changed. Later on, in 1978, President Carter had interest rates of 20-odd%. South Carolina had a 12% usury law. So the mortgage business shut down as such. I had a number of houses, maybe 12 houses that were up and couldn't sell them, couldn't get a mortgage. And so I was having terrible financial difficulty at that point in time, which was a bit different than when I first went into the business.
In the late 70s, so over a 6-year period, it was that dramatic.
It was dramatic, but one thing leads to another. At that time, we had speculated on a piece of property in Travelers Rest, South Carolina, and a group came along that wanted to buy a piece of it to build an affordable housing complex under the Farmers Home Administration. And then they went broke. And I asked them, I said, what were you going to build? And they said, well, we were going to build a farmer's home, rural rental housing under the Housing Act of 1949, which was totally beyond, alien to me.
Yeah. I
said, I don't know what that is, but in order to keep my crews busy and keep going, then we'll build one. And at that time, the tax rates were 70%. Personal income tax rate was 70%. And let's say that interest rates were 21%. It was a very strange period of time.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
But I built that first complex and did it with my mother, my accountant, my attorney, and myself. And I built it in Travelers Rest. It was a 36-unit apartment complex. And I sat on it for a couple of years to see how it would work, dealing with the federal government. We had a direct federal loan, and it worked fine. And in the early 80s, tax shelter syndication was just taking off. And at that time, I thought syndication was something to do with the mafia, a syndicate or whatever. But tax shelter and tax-favored investments were very attractive, and people were investing. And so I built a friend of mine. We went to the Citadel, and we were at a cocktail party, and I told him I had just completed this property in Travelers Rest. And he was from Chester. And his name was Albert Alvin. I told Albert, I said, Albert, if you can find us a site, I think I know how to put one together. And so we built the second one in Chester and sold it and made a fair amount of money. And from that point forward, I started working on affordable housing.
And you were doing these all under that Act of 1949? You didn't know anything about when you first heard about it and then learned about it, or?
At the time, the federal government was pumping almost $1 billion a year into the Farmers Home Administration apartments programs, and all in rural communities. In South Carolina, it was an extremely hot deal. I mean, as far as that, it's hot. I mean, there was a lot of money, $450 million or something, a lot of money for the state, and all in small rural communities. And over the period from 1978 to 1992, we probably built 40 farmers' home complexes. A number of them in your viewing area, as a matter of fact.
Absolutely. From 1978 to
1992. In 1992, they discontinued the program, effectively speaking. No more funding. And at that point in time, as I say, we had built approximately 40 of those farmers' home complexes in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. In 1986, the Republican President Reagan decided they wanted to get the federal government out of housing. People are familiar with government projects as such, and the Section 8 program had produced apartments that are not pleasant, high crime, high concentrations of poverty, not properly managed, and the public has got a perception of those projects and what they consist of, and Reagan wanted to see the private sector become involved in the production of affordable housing. So they put in I can't remember the name of the actual federal statute that went in 1987, but they came in with a tax credit program that basically allowed the private sector to make an investment in affordable housing through a private individual, a for-profit individual. As I say, we had built, 250, 300 houses. I have a general contractor's license and a residential home builder's license. The business of having the private sector become involved in affordable housing, it made a lot of sense. And if you have an individual that's responsible for the property, that's financially responsible for it, that built it and stays with it, we are the general partner of every complex that has been built since the first one in Travelers Rest, which is to say, we're responsible for it financially. I'm responsible for the upkeep of it. I'm responsible to report to investors. And since it's basically private property, then you take care of it as a private individual would do. And that's been kind of the genesis of the...
And the loan is insured by the federal government, though. Is that how that's set up?
Well, there are two different programs. Again, from 1978 forward in the farmers' home complexes, those were direct federal loans issued by the Treasury, and they were sold to investors. And I stayed; those were limited partners. I stay in as a general partner. But the federal government has a direct involvement in it. They're direct lenders. In the tax credit program, which came along in '87, the federal government's only involvement is the actual issuance of the credit, the award of the credits. Beyond that, the financing, the management, the construction, the annual supervision, the compliance, is all in private hands. There's no federal involvement.
It's amazing, David.
It's kind of interesting. The government only has two tests. They have an income test and they have a rent test. The income test is that a resident can make no more than 60% of the county's median area income. The rent test is that the rent plus the utilities can be no greater than 30% of the individual's income. So the income is, it's got to be 60% or less of the county's average. The rent plus utilities can be no greater than 30% of an individual's income. So those two tests are the criteria by which you can enter and live in one of these apartment communities.
When was it in '86 that you saw? Go ahead, grab a little water if you need some. Was it in '86 that you saw the writing on the wall that '92 was going to happen? I mean, that the FHA loans were going to be phased out. Or when did you see that coming? Was it almost immediate, or?
Well, as I said, the law was enacted in 1987 that provided for the tax credits. Farmers Home was still, at that point in time, funding properties. And so we continued to build the Farmers Home properties. In 1992, the Farmers Home budget was slashed, and that program quit. At the time, it was very difficult to get anybody to lend money on one of these new tax credit transactions because nobody had been doing it. So the first one we did, which was in Greenville, called Landwood Ridge, and it was a 48-unit elderly property, had 5 different loans, which was what we call brain damage. It's very difficult to get 5 different lenders together. Who's on first, who's on second, who's on third. But you had to layer the financing in order to get it done. And it's become easier as time has progressed. In fact, it's now a very attractive product. In South Carolina, there is a competition for these credits. They're awarded by the South Carolina State Housing Finance Agency through the federal government. The state controls the allocation of the credits. They do it through a plan, what they call a qualified allocation plan, that the governor signs every year that targets where the credits will go. And by following the qualified allocation plan, you basically can determine where you're going to locate the next property based on what the state desires or where the state feels the greatest need is.
Is there a similar program in North Carolina, for instance,
Identical.
for our North Carolina viewers? Identical?
Identical. Well, when I say identical, it is the same federal program. It is run by the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency through their qualified allocation plan, which is different than South Carolina's. And then the state of Tennessee, Tennessee Housing Development Authority, VHDA, Virginia Housing Development Authority, Maryland CDA, Community Development Authority. Each state has their own agency that basically runs it from a state level, which is another good thing. It's not run out of Washington. It's basically run out of the state capital.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's folks in communities who probably think we need some affordable housing in our community. Can they ever track down people like yourself or otherwise if they feel their community is underserved by good affordable housing projects? I mean, what happens in an instance like that? Let's say someone a viewer in Lumberton, for instance, or in Red Springs says, we don't have any affordable housing projects here. Could they contact the state, or could they contact people like yourself to say, come take a look at our community? Or does the state legislature have to say, we're earmarking some funds for Robeson County, or we're earmarking for certain counties? How is that done?
It's a good question. Every year the state looks at their qualified allocation program and to find out where the need is and where they think they need to target housing. And oftentimes when a community desires affordable housing, which quite frankly is a criteria for growth and for a healthy community.
Oh, yeah.
You can't provide safe, decent, sanitary housing for your lower income citizens. They're going to leave. They're going to go elsewhere. And so the provision of affordable housing is a crucial element to a successful, healthy, growing community. Oftentimes, the community will, if they are in need of affordable housing, can contact the state housing finance agency, and they would give them a list of folks that are participating in the program. They probably would not recommend any one person. They could at least tell them who is participating. The political leadership of the community needs to get involved with the state housing agency to discuss with them whether or not they are currently in the selection criteria in that qualified allocation program, because it can be tailored every year differently. And oftentimes, the agency will come in and they'll rank communities based on whether or not they received any affordable housing in previous years. And if a community hasn't had any construction or development in the last, say, 5 years, they move to the top of the list. But quite frankly, it's the wheel that squeaks loudest gets the oil. And if the community is looking for this type of housing, then they need to let their political leaders know it, and that they certainly will have an influence on writing the next year's plan.
Absolutely. Well, you know, I think about it. Obviously, you live on the Horry-Marion County line. I think you said your children attended schools in Marion County at a PD Academy. And when you think about an aspect like that, I'm sure there's communities, and have the political leaders in Marion County or Marlborough County, for instance, or other parts of our viewing area, have they been told of some of the needs in communities? I would suspect that Marion County, for instance, would have some serious needs.
Marion County has serious needs, and it's interesting that you mentioned that. Right now in downtown Mullins, there's a 22-unit elderly development that is under construction. It's being done by a gentleman out of North Carolina, a guy named Dwayne Anderson, who's got a great reputation. But it's on Main Street, and he's taken, I guess, maybe 6 old deserted stores. And downtown Mullins had some difficulty. But it's taken those 6 stores and it's joined them together, remodeling and revitalizing about a $2.5 million property, and will be a dramatic upgrade to the downtown Mullins area, and will provide housing for senior citizens in that neck of the woods. And it's a nice urban redevelopment enterprise.
Absolutely. This is gigantic, David, when we think about the preservation aspect of exactly what you're doing. It is gigantic when you think about that in the communities that we serve, for instance, that Fox 43 or TV 13 or 15, the communities that our viewing areas serve, there are great needs of this sort.
Fred, I'll give you another, for instance. We're doing now the renovation of the old Aner Elementary School on 319, Highway 319, going from Aner to Cool Spring. But the school has been vacant for 12 years. It was rotting, falling in, leaks in the ceilings, and mold and mildew, and an abandoned elementary school. And we are turning it into housing for the elderly. It's what we call an adaptive reuse. It's taking an old school building and turning it into residential multifamily. But it's a $2.2 million development. We have 22 units of housing, which are actually full independent living. They have their own kitchen, dining room, living room, bedroom area. It's taking the old classrooms and converting them into housing units. And it'll be a very attractive facility when it's finished, and we'll take a decrepit and abandoned building and turn it into a useful community asset. And that will actually be owned, by the way, by the town of Aner. We're doing it in conjunction with them. They form their own nonprofit, Aner Housing Alliance. We couple them with Grand Strand Housing, which is the nonprofit we work with here in Myrtle Beach. And those two nonprofits will actually own that facility into the future, and we will help them. We're going to develop it, and we will manage it and make sure it stays in tax credit compliance. But it's a pretty nice asset. That's kind of fun.
Absolutely, that must feel. I mean, just knowing when you walk into a community, particularly some of the smaller communities throughout the state, and I say throughout South Carolina, you've obviously done quite a few developments in North Carolina as well as throughout the Southeast. When you think about going into a community and seeing needs, and then to know that you can truly make an impact on that community by refurbishing, teaming up with a community like Aner, and refurbishing an elementary school must truly mean a lot.
It's very satisfying.
I'm sure.
You're not only providing housing to people that otherwise would not have safe, decent, sanitary housing. You're providing a impetus, a positive economic boost to the community. Now, I'm a for-profit developer. That's how I make a living, so I get paid fairly well to do it. It's, from my perspective, it's one of the best jobs in the world.
It must be.
It's very satisfying.
I sit here and think about that. I hadn't contemplated the aspect, and of course, as you said, when folks hear affordable housing, they think that is a buzzword instead for low-income housing or for other, as you term, negative terms. It's exactly not that.
Let me discuss that with you very quickly. You go into almost any community and tell them that we're going to bring in affordable housing, or people call it low-income housing, which immediately brings to mind crime and concentrated poverty and negative things. Well, the biggest thing we have to overcome when we first make an initial introduction to the community is to show them that what we are building is conventionally operated, conventionally managed. We have rules and regulations just like any other conventional complex. We own it. We're not going to put up with crime. We're not going to put up with people tearing it up. We're not going to put up with fights and noise and drugs. We're responsible for it financially. If something goes wrong, then I have to pay for it. So we work to build a product that's going to last a long time. It looks good. I mean, this you can't tell that this is any kind of anything different than any conventional housing. In fact, in a lot of cases, it's nicer. We build it with dishwashers, microwaves, ceiling fans, tray ceilings, large square footages. They're attractive. They're very attractive stuff, and it's well maintained, and it's going to last a long time.
And as you said, that first reaction so negative, how do you get them, I assume, quickly to change that opinion? Are you able to say, call such and such community, call Aner, and just hear a quick word, for instance, about what's happening in that community, or Travelers Rest, or Clio, or...
The best thing you've got going for it is what you've done in the past.
Right.
And as I say, the greatest obstacle to affordable housing, we call it NIMBY, NIMBYism, which is not in my backyard, NIMBY. But once you have the opportunity to show folks what you've done in the past, let them talk to the mayors of the communities that you've been in, talk to the Housing Finance Agency, let them go see the properties. We have a nice website. We say, cause when you go into any community and say, well, I'm David Douglas from Aner, South Carolina. I'm here to bring affordable housing. I go, who are you?
So let me show you the way out. Yeah.
How quickly can we show you the way out? But once you've had an opportunity to show them what you're doing and what it means to their community, of course, these properties pay property taxes. They're a tremendous asset. In the state of South Carolina currently, last year there were 74 applications for affordable housing development opportunities or development complexes. And of the 74, there are probably 15 were funded. So it's very competitive. 1 in 4, 1 in 5 is funded. It's highly sought after. And once people understand what it is that they're getting, it's a tremendous resource. It's a tremendous asset.
The preservation aspect is just, as you said, you got to wake up feeling good in the morning.
We did it here in Myrtle Beach on 10th Avenue, the old Carver Elementary School that was vacant for, gosh, I mean, I'm not 12, 15 years vacant. When I first went there with the guy named Cliff Rudd in the city of Myrtle Beach, wonderful gentleman, we went to the school. It had been abandoned. It was boarded up. I had a chain. The two steel doors had holes bored in it. Had a big chain coming through it. And unlocked the lock, pushed the doors open, and there was clothing and mattresses and broken liquor bottles and mold. And couldn't see down the hallway. And you hear mice or rats scuttling along. I said, well, I'm not going to go in there. And he said, we had to go get 2 policemen from Myrtle Beach with their squad car and their lights to go in the place. And it was terrible. Mold, mildew, as I say, vagrants had been hanging out in it for years. And today it's Swansgate Apartments.
It's gorgeous.
It's pretty. It's real pretty. And it's occupied by the elderly. People don't move out unless they become ill. And we've since built another, I guess, 90 and some new construction around it. But it's taken an old, nasty building and turned it into something that's really pretty. In fact, that property won the HUD Best Practice Award, won the State Housing Achievement Award. It won for the city of Myrtle Beach. It won the State Municipal Association Award. And the city of Myrtle Beach, by the way, is a partner there.
Yes.
That's an $8 million development, and the city has pumped 10% of the total cost in various and sundry awards, grants, and they've been. Without the city, it couldn't have been built. So the city of Myrtle Beach was the one that really made that happen, and they were the ones that sought me out. So I got to give them credit where credit's due. If the community wants this kind of development, they can get it if they're willing to finance it, back it, and be supportive of it.
Well, I'm excited to know that there's a chance that some viewers would see this, could communicate with their political leaders in their community, whether it's Pamplico or Johnsonville or up to Clio or Bennettsville, McCall, all over our viewing area, even in the North Carolina aspect, and get in touch with folks like yourself, just like yourself, particularly folks who have ties to both states. Dave, you won't believe it, 25 minutes flown by. We've only got a couple of minutes. the producer of the show would flip, considering I haven't gotten through. I've only asked you 3 questions of the 30 or so that she prepared, but I was trying to think. And of course we haven't talked about Seagate Village. And as you said, you're a private developer doing private developments at the same time, teaming up with local communities to really make them strong. I'd love to talk, and we're just going to have to get you back in to talk about Seagate Village. It is incredible to talk about some of the other properties you've got under construction. But folks oftentimes say, Greg, if you get an opportunity to ask this guy or that person, this woman, someone who's really done well, and in this instance preserved a lot of communities, David, what's helped get you there? I mean, what's been the inspiration for you?
That's an interesting question. My father, I guess, would be main inspiration. He believed in hard work. Now, my first job was as a bottle boy for Dr. Pepper, getting bottles out from under the grocery stores out in the country. And later on working for him as a construction guy. But he drilled into me to work hard and have a strong faith in the Lord, and that's been a good thing. I like it because it's a legacy. I'm producing something that's going to be here long after I'm gone, helping people. I get paid to do it. And it wasn't any grand plan. Good luck is when preparation meets opportunity. If interest rates hadn't been at 22% and I hadn't been about to go broke as a single-family home builder, I don't think I would have stumbled into it. So it's been good luck and good fortune and hopefully the Lord's direction.
Absolutely. And if you weren't currently the chief executive officer, the president of the Douglas Company, what do you think you'd be doing?
I've always worked for myself. I thought I'd be in business. In fact, you're not going to be a doctor, a lawyer, a scientist, or a priest. You're probably going to be in business. So I guess I'd be in business, but Lord knows where I'd be at this point in time.
He wasn't running the Douglas Company. He could be anywhere. He'd probably be out spending time with his children or out fishing or hunting.
Good things. All those are good things.
A man who's paid to help others. A man who's paid to help others. And truly doing that, if you've sat here for the last almost 30 minutes, you'd hear about what true preservation is in communities. David, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People coming up next. We want to thank David Douglas for making today's Carolina People so special and for helping make the lives of so many in our area just what it is, affordable.